Hey, what's up guys, it's Renaldo here. So this video is going to focus on an inconvenient truth that the ANC-led government refuses to acknowledge or even talk about. Now, remember last week when I made a video about Cyril Ramaphosa blaming Jan van Riebeeck for something that happened almost 400 years ago, and how it's just the evergreen excuse for the ANC. Whenever the ANC does something wrong, they don't blame themselves. They've never blamed themselves. They either blame apartheid, colonialism, or Jan van Riebeeck. Now that sent me down this rabbit hole to actually ask a very important question. Who has caused the most pain and suffering in South Africa's history? And the answer is not apartheid, not colonialism, and definitely not Jan van Riebeeck. Now, it's important to note that the amount of deaths that took place under apartheid was 21,000, and that was also black on black violence, white on black violence, black on white violence. And of course, the apartheid issue is not merely just the amount of people that died, but also displacement and generational effects on wealth. People didn't have the opportunities that other people had, and therefore the next generation suffered because of it. So I completely understand that concept, but even apartheid is not going to get close to what I'm going to mention as the number one cause of pain and suffering in South Africa. Now, like I said, the ANC government, specifically Cyril Ramaphosa and the previous presidents, will always refer to apartheid, Jan van Riebeeck, or colonialism. But there is someone that stands head and shoulders above any other atrocity that has taken place in South Africa. And I'll give you a tip. They even named an airport in South Africa after him. Now, that's right, Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu, single-handedly, is the person that has caused more deaths than any other person in South Africa. Shaka Zulu killed more people than apartheid, colonialism, Jan van Riebeeck, and all the atrocities, that you want to put together. And yet we don't hear the ANC condemn Shaka Zulu. I mean, he killed more black people than anybody else in the history of South Africa. The estimate is between 1 to 2 million people, and this was mostly due to the Mfekane. And we don't hear about that. Every single time there's an atrocity that takes place, or the ANC government wants to get some brownie points and want to appeal to more voters, then they bring in apartheid, colonialism, and blame Jan van Riebeeck. But they never ever talk about what happened under Shaka Zulu's watch, when he killed his own people and many, many other tribes that either don't exist anymore today or have severely been compromised because of what happened in the 1800s. And that's also important to note. They will very quickly go to the 1600s, but then they will ignore what happened in the early 18th century, and they don't want to talk about it. How is it possible that somebody that killed between 1 and 2 million people aren't spoken of in South Africa, but they will fall back to apartheid, or they will talk about the Sharpeville massacre, but nobody talks about the Mfekane? Why is that? Why is it that the ANC will blame everything and everybody except Shaka Zulu? And also the irony here, this is the double standard in this country, where if you're black, you could kill 1 million people plus, we'll still name an airport after you. But hey, you created a Snoopy here in 1652. How dare you? You are evil. You are a vile human being, and what you brought to this country is terrible. Ignoring the fact that that little route that Bartolomeus Diaz and Vasco da Gama and eventually Jan van Riebeeck perfected has brought in trillions of rands to the South African economy, even to this day. But yet Jan van Riebeeck is a villain, and Shaka Zulu, that arguably really didn't contribute anything to that magnitude to South Africa, is glorified. Can you explain that to me? Remember when every airport had its own name, like a person's name. And then they said, no, 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 we need to be more neutral. And we are going to change all the airport names to neutral, like location names, like Cape Town International, and Port Elizabeth Airport, etc. And then they decided in KZN, instead of calling it KwaZulu-Natal International Airport, they called it after South Africa's Hitler, Shaka Zulu. They called it King Shaka International Airport. It's a bit weird, don't you think? I mean, that's like going to Germany and then you land at Adolf Hitler International Airport. How does that make sense? Well, it does make sense if you think about it in an ANC type of way, where they can talk about the heroics of Shaka Zulu and how he led the Zulu nation into a specific way of fighting, but they will leave out the fact that nearly 2 million people, and some speculate that it's 2.5 million people, that was killed during his watch. Now, it's also important to note that the people that suffered the most was the Nguni tribes and also the Xhosas. But yet, today, it's almost as if the Xhosas don't remember that Shaka Zulu nearly wiped them off the face of the earth. And then, of course, the Nguni tribes that are left. It's very weird and I think very disrespectful for a government to name an airport after somebody that killed hundreds of thousands of the people that live in the surrounding areas, don't you think? I mean, that is literally like calling one of South Africa's airports HF Verwoerd once again. Yeah, no, but once again, just to illustrate the point very clearly, the ANC government will gladly talk about apartheid and all the atrocities and talk about colonialism and all the atrocities and every now and then bring up Jan van Riebeeck as if it all started when Jan van Riebeeck arrived. But not Jan van Riebeeck or any single person in apartheid or any single person in colonialism, even Cecil John Rhodes, came close to killing as many people as Shaka Zulu. And yet today, you will not hear a single person in the ANC, EFF or MK condemn what Shaka Zulu did during the Mfecane. How does that work? That's just the double standards in this country, where if you are a white individual, then hey, we can come after you for anything that you've done in your past, but we're going to ignore this one individual that has actually got the #1 position for killing people in this country. And in actual fact, we're going to name an airport after that individual. And all of this just boils down to the fact that the ANC hates to discuss things that make them and their history look terrible. Because they will gladly point at white people and say, look at all these terrible things that you have done. Noting, though, that even, during this period, the Afrikaners also suffered. I mean, the British came and they put our women and children into concentration camps and they nearly wiped the Afrikaner off the face of the earth. And nobody really talks about that. But yet apartheid and colonialism is mentioned all the time and nothing is said about the Mfecane and about the biggest killer of black people in this country, which is Shaka Zulu. Why not? Why doesn't the media talk about that? Why doesn't the ANC government talk about that? Why is this not taught in our history books in South Africa in 2026? Because it's an inconvenient truth. And they don't want to showcase that it's not only white people that did terrible things in South Africa, but also black people. Because that destroys the narrative. That doesn't assist the narrative that the ANC wants to drive around the world by talking about how they overcame this terrible system. Ironically, though, the Mfecane happened almost 200 years after Jan van Riebeeck settled here, and that's never spoken about. So, just to conclude this video, whenever you hear Cyril Ramaphosa or the ANC open their mouths and want to talk cock about the history of this country, just remind them and ask them, but what about Shaka Zulu and what about the Mfecane? And why, if you are so against killings and terrible atrocities in this country, are you celebrating this individual that is comparatively the South African version of Hitler? Why are you so proud of this individual that you named an airport after him? I think these are the type of discussions that we should be having in 2026 if the ANC wants to continue down this path of colonialism, apartheid, and blaming Jan van Riebeeck. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash that like button. Share this video far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe. It's absolutely free. It won't cost you anything. And the overwhelming majority of you that watch my content aren't subscribed. But you can fix that by clicking the subscribe button below. And then if you'd like to financially support me or this channel, you can do so by giving a super thanks. It's a $sign below, and you can click it and choose an amount and donate. Or you can become a member to this channel by clicking the join button below, and that'll cost you R39.99 a month. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till later. Cheers and peace out.
You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say I wear my massacre. I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say I wear my massacre.